Awesome. Um, so what are motifs? A lot of people are still asking the question. I see the question in the group chat, or some people have texted me apart, trying to figure out like how do I understand this. Now, those of you who play music, okay, this is, I believe, the Fifth Symphony, the notes for it. And what do you notice in the ones that are singled out or marked in red?
That they follow a pattern.
Okay, they follow a pattern. What kind of pattern?
They repeat themselves.
Okay, what kind of what kind of repetition? What is being repeated?
The note?
Exactly. Okay, you're correct. The notes are the ones being repeated. Okay, and this is one of the most famous motifs that everybody knows. All of you guys have heard dun 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 dun. Right? We know that. So let's see if let me just pause, share computer stop. Boom, there it goes.
Like dancing.
I see you, chef, are really enjoying the music. All right, so we're gonna stop there. Now imagine the way that the composer is able to bring together all of those sounds to create this musical experience for us and bring us back into that same tension or feeling at that particular moment. The same way authors in writing uh, do that to bring together the experience of the reader. Let's continue with the presentation. So, okay. Those of you who are a little bit more visual and you like art, um, what do you notice in this first artist right here, Mackenzie Childs?
Pattern.
Black and white
Pattern and white. Pattern.
Okay, so most of you said pattern, pattern of black and white,
pattern. Yeah,
checkered pattern.
checkered pattern.
Okay, so there's many different household items. Okay, there's plates, there's tea kettles, there's pots, vases, and other kitchen implements. But all of them, in some way, shape, or form, have that checkered pattern. With that, she's able to create this motif of, well, I am offering you elegance and something that's a little bit classic, but I'm adding a fun element to that. Okay, so it creates a theme or a message that she's trying to send that, hey, although we have this extremely classic style, it can still be something fun, something contemporary. Does that make sense? Okay. Same thing with Insano. You guys have heard or seen his artwork in Panama.
The eyes of the animals. They are the
Okay.
same.
So some of the patterns that we look at or we notice are the eyes of the animals are most of the time whited out.
Colors.
The same
Okay.
color.
The colors, the
Very
color palette
similar
uses
color
is the
palette.
same.
Very good. Okay, it's like those aqua colors, blue, very bright colors. There's some yellow for highlights. There's some red here and there for highlights. And all of the animals that he draws or the pictures that he draws are very they use this black border to really emphasize the shapes, okay, to give the shapes a little bit more weight, make the animals or the things that he's drawing feel a little bit more solid, almost come to life. Not only that, but also by sectioning off little parts of the animal, whether it's like scales or feathers, it almost builds them up into having like a kind of armor, like a protective shield around these animals to some degree. So at least that's kind of the message that he's able to send by drawing them in this way. And he's able to show a little bit of movement with that. Then we have a Laolu NYC. I don't know if you guys have seen him before or his work, whether it's in clothes or sneakers. He's done like some branding work for different shoe companies. He did an advertising campaign also for airplane company. What do you notice in his style?
The thing is like people
painting
pattern.
bodies.
White man.
What, one person at a time?
Like
They
it's
like
like
to paint
Exactly.
in bodies.
Okay, so I saw he's creating patterns. I saw that or heard someone say that he's painting on bodies. Okay, so definitely we see that he uses tribal patterns or patterns that would be associated maybe with tribal life or tattoos, and most of them or all of them, I believe, are with some kind of white ink, which has a symbolic meaning if you are willing to look into that. And the majority are directly on skin, not on, like, he uses skin as a canvas instead of using like paper or something else. And lastly, I don't know if you guys have seen this other Panamanian artist on the right side, Brach or Bracho. Have you guys seen some of his work?
Yes, he uses
Yes.
bomb smokes for his pictures.
No.
And the lightning.
Okay, so we see in all of the pictures, we see like some kind of use of light. We see a lot of connection to nature. The majority of them are somewhere outdoors, or at least there's some element of green or looking outside. Okay, we see that the images have this kind of phantasm aspect to them. They're not necessarily extremely clear. They're very darkened, or there's shadows, there's mist, there's blurriness.
it's
So
like tetric.
Exactly. Okay, it's a little bit. I don't. The word is not gory, but a little bit dark in nature or in tone. Okay, but it does definitely show a connection between humans and their environment, whether it's individually or as a group. Does that make sense? So even a visual artist is able to make these connections and create a pattern for us to understand their work, and then through understanding several of their pieces, be able to identify what is the message that he's trying to share with us. Guys, don't get distracted by your cell phones. Please put them away as far as possible so that they don't become a distraction at this moment. Right, Almanza and friends? Cell phones away. All right, let's continue. So, most of you, or some of you at this point, have probably watched Elite, right?
Hey, Omar.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
Sorry if there's a little bit of spoilers, but what do you notice in most of these scenes?
There.
Romance.
Roman.
Yeah.
Love.
There's some kind
Drama.
of drama. There's some kind of romance. But think a little bit deeper. Think what we've been. Think about what
The way
we've been
they
learning.
look at their eyes.
Intense looking.
Uh-huh.
Think deeper. Think symbolism.
Connection.
Looks
Spiritual connection.
Like snare that.
Secrets.
Maybe like how
Ethnicities, like different.
Just look at the images, and what do the images have in common?
they look like close.
Closeness, intimacy.
Closeness.
Secrets.
Okay,
Intimacy.
secrets, intimacy, relationship,
Human
the
affection.
affection, looking,
Forbidden.
symbolism.
Oh, no, Marina se murió.
Okay.
What is the one symbol that is in common in all of the pictures?
Like
Closeness.
A symbol. Think of a thing, of something concrete,
I think
Water.
we talk about
Water.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you. Somebody said it.
Ah, sí.
Water.
Yes.
water.
All of the images.
Sí.
I don't see water
I am
anywhere.
the chair.
No,
Guys,
There's a
no.
pool.
listening. Listening. So, okay. So in all of the images, there is water in there. And we said before that water can serve as a symbol of life, as a symbol of truth, as a symbol of change. Okay, like baptism, water baptizes people and changes them. So, this is the scene. I can't say what happens, or I don't want to say it to not spoil the people who haven't watched the show. But
Oh, I know what happened.
this right here, they're laying right next to the pool. Okay, here we see Omar and Anders. They're, I think, on a pier or some place overlooking a body of water. Here we have, I forgot what his name was.
Party.
They have the pool party happening. Okay, Yerai and his girlfriend at the time, Carla, they're at a pool party. Here is
Nadia.
Guzman.
when Nadia and Guzman take the swim in the pool. Okay, and in the last one,
Valerio.
we have Valerio and what's her name again? And Lucrecia by the pool. Now, if you notice, in all of them, the person who gets in the water changes, whereas the person who is not in the water doesn't change.
What?
Yes.
I'll repeat that. I'll repeat that. Think of this the next time that you're watching shows. Go ahead and think of these ideas. In all of these images and all of these scenes, the person who gets in the water changes, and the person who doesn't remains the same.
Prof, do you think that the directors did that on purpose?
I don't know, man. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it just happens. I mean, am I wrong?
I understand what you mean,
Su
but
casualidad, su
I
casualidad.
think in the scene with Carla and Jerai, Carla is the one that gets in the pool.
Yes.
And she, like, after that she was going through some addiction or
Exactly.
Spoilers.
She changes.
So
Changes.
she definitely changes her behavior because she's trying to be with this guy for the goal that they have at that particular point. Nadia and Guzman, the relationship changes
They
after
both
they get in the
change.
pool because before Nadia's trying to be the most correct student and do really well in school and not be attracted to boys because that's not what she's there for, and Guzman is only trying to talk to her to to please his girlfriend in creating a bad situation for Nadia. But after they have that swim, their perspective of each other changes. Does that make sense? The relationship starts to change.
Yes.
In the
Okay.
first
Oh,
picture,
teacher.
The first one, what happens?
the girl
What
changes
happens? I
in
know
the
what
water.
happens, but what is the change?
Oh.
I think it's like being close to the water but not getting there. It's like
She dropped into the water.
Yes.
Okay. He pulled her out, and their
Ya
relationship,
cayó.
changes.
what are we talking about?
Okay, so
the first picture.
water is a changing factor all the time.
What?
It's always here. Guzman and not Guzman, sorry. Omar and Anders have not gone through that change yet. But later on, when I think they have like a scene where they come out of a bar or something, and it's raining on them, and Anders gets beat up. Their relationship starts to change. So notice the pattern that the author is able, that the director in this case is able to create of interaction with the characters to communicate a message. It's not only in one play, it's not only in one book, it's everywhere. You just have to look for it. So, again, what is a motif? A motif in literature is often a meaningful pattern of symbols, actions, or events that reinforce a theme. Okay, the difference between the two is that a theme, as we see here, is the fundamental concept of the underlying message that is conveyed through a piece of writing, and a motif is a recurring element that has symbolic value and communicates the theme. The theme is usually not explicitly given. That's why we have the practice of me asking you guys to tell me what the theme is based on what you're seeing in the story, whereas the motif is explicitly stated, or we see it occur a little bit more concretely by the use of repetition. Okay, the motif is there, we see it. The message, we have to be able to infer it on our own. And then we have that theme is abstract and motif is a little bit more concrete. So now, in order to understand motif a little bit more, we also have to understand symbolism. So as we said before, the theme is an abstract and universal idea, lesson, or message explored throughout a work of literature. It is what the writer is trying to say about life, or a lesson about life and human experience in general. It's something that goes beyond the scope of what happened within the story. Does that make sense? Any questions so far?
I had a question. A motive, for example, could I say an example
Yes.
of the
Shoot.
story? Could it be like a physical object that is shown several times throughout this?
Yes, definitely. It especially if it's a symbol, it's a physical thing, and you see it used multiple times throughout the story. The meaning might not be the same always for every story, but think, what is the author trying to show me with this symbol? Okay, what does this represent? Okay, Palacios, were you raising your hand? I'm not sure. No, was someone else going to ask something, or yes?
Could a motive be like a recurring action that occurs in the?
Yes. Okay. So, although I said that motif is more concrete, okay, it also can be an action, because an action is concrete. An action is something that the character is doing. Okay, it's an action, whether it's thinking, running, vomiting. Ha ha ha, Amir. Okay, it is a physical thing that the character is doing, and it sends a message. So yes, Munoz, you're good in identifying an action as a possible motif. So it could be a person, anything, a symbol, a place, an action that a character takes that represents something else. We can identify that as a motif.
Could it be a thought?
A thought, a recurring thought, definitely. Okay. So if the author has actor or character has a recurring memory that is mentioned throughout the text, then you can definitely say, well, what is this trying to show me, or what's the author trying to show me with this?
But Prof, I have a question. That action or thought has to be like specific, or it could be like, for example, you can deduce that Amir treats Hassan bad, for example.
Yeah.
Every time. That could be a motive. The bad treatment, even though they're not the same, like exactly the same.
Exactly. It is a constant slight abuses that he does as the privileged kid to the kid in a lesser situation or condition or less socioeconomic status. And he doesn't see it as something extremely bad. He just sees it as like, oh, well, I'm just being funny, or I'm just having fun at his expense. So definitely that repeated behavior shows us a pattern, and it has a meaning, or can be analyzed as having a meaning.
So in order to be a motive, it has to be like repeated through the story. And
definitely. Okay. So let's look a little bit more into that.
Would it be like a feeling that a character has?
Even a feeling or an emotion, if you see it multiple times, can serve as a motif. So, really quickly, it says here, a literary symbol is often a tangible thing, an object, person, place, or action that represents something intangible, like a complex concept or emotion. Okay? So usually it's something tangible and it represents something bigger. Okay? For example, the car that you have in the world that we live in, what do people associate with cars that people drive?
Social status.
Social status. What else?
Wealth.
Money, the money.
Wealth, power. Okay, so cars typically end up being a symbol of respect, power, social status, etc. all the time, right? At the beginning of the story, what kind of car does Baba have?
A Mustang Ford.
Okay,
Black Mustang.
Black Mustang. When they're in the U.S., what kind of car does Baba have?
Ford.
Ford. And
Like a van.
A bus.
Van.
Okay, so
Like a worker.
so that serves as a symbol to show us the evolution of the character in the context of how are they represented, what's their power or social standing in society during different parts of the novel. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, let's advance. So, symbolism in the Kite Runner. We have winter being mentioned a bunch of times. Okay, and from reading mythology and all these other different stories, even Night by Elie Wiesel, etc., we know that winter depicts a time of calm, time of silence, but also depicts a time of harshness, mourning, death, ending, okay, detachment from the things of the world. So it can definitely be used as a symbol for any of these ideas in the novel. Now, if you look for it, the word winter is mentioned 57 times in the Kite Runner. 57 times. I mean, is that repetition, yes or no?
Yes.
Of course, okay? So now, once we notice that repetition,
57.
we can say that this is a motif, okay? It is being repeated, so it is a motif. So, winter is mentioned, as I said, in the beginning when Amir has the memory of the alley, like the first couple of lines, when he has the memory of the alley, it is mentioned that Hassan was born during the winter, and Amir was born a year earlier, so we can infer that it was probably during winter as well. Okay, winter is when the kite flying takes place. Winter was at the end of the school year when Amir and Hassan would spend the time together. Hassan's son, that if you guys have read up till that part now, which you should have, chapter 16, yeah, Hassan's son was also born during the winter. Okay, and we also know that an entire winter passed before Amir was willing to speak to Soraya. Okay, and he only spoke to her when Baba sent him to like do this little errand, and we see that Baba is understanding a little bit more of Amir, but still trying to push him to be the best Afghan that he can by encouraging him to follow in Afghan tradition and not disrespect Soraya's family.
Bro,
That makes sense. Yes.
but winter couldn't be like also like life, because like the Hassan was born in winter, his son was born in winter.
Okay, so it is, but it isn't.
I think
Okay,
it's like a
it's
new
a,
start.
if you look at it from the perspective of that what we said before, it is. Does Hassan have a great life?
No.
No. Does his son have a great life?
No.
For the most part, no.
We don't know.
For the most part, no. So it's a life of harshness. They're born during a harsh time.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry, what was the question?
Like for example, when Amir was born, his mother died, and when Hassan was born, his mother left. So we can see that relationship there, that of harshness and difficulty.
Exactly, and very good to point out that, Palacios. Excellent. Okay, so we go to the last slide, or this slide. Okay, here we see that winter is being used as a symbol so many times, and it becomes a motif. In the beginning, it is mentioned each time that Amir has memories of the best part of his childhood, he mentions winter. And as the book progresses, this changes into being mentioned when he has painful memories of the past. Okay, so that is the motif. Mentioning winter every time that he has these memories of the good parts and the bad parts. That's the motif, the repetition of that relationship. So that creates a theme. And a possible message, a possible interpretation, I'm not saying that this is the only right one, I'm just saying a possibility is for us to deduce the message that memories of the past, good or bad, will always be there to haunt you. Do we see this take place in the novel?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Is this a life lesson? Is this a life lesson that parents or grandparents or people have mentioned to you before?
Yes.
So that at that point we can identify that as the theme that is being communicated through what we're getting or the images that we're getting within the story. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's talk about this: deformities and scars. Okay. Characters that are marked for greatness.
Harry Potter.
Exactly. So if you read the little section that it says there, I took it out from this book. Where is it? This book, How to Read Literature Like a Professor. Kind of fun book to read.
Bro,
Yes.
I have a little question. You said that winter was a repetition throughout the book,
Yes.
but it's also a symbolism and it's also a motive, so it can count as.
Wait. The symbol is winter. Okay. The motif is what happens or what's the relationship of that symbol to the story. The repeated use of winter to draw out the memories of Amir, that is the motif. Every time that we see winter, it's tied in with the memories or something life-changing is happening. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So the symbol is just the object. The motif is the repeated relationship of that object to something in the story. All right. So now moving forward with deformities and scars, the section of the book says Hunchback of Notre Dame, or in the Beauty of the Beast, Beauty and the Beast, we have a hideous character that's ugly on the outside, but has an inner person beauty to them. Okay, so anytime that we see characters that for some reason have some kind of problem with their outward appearance, that tells us something about that character. So are deformities and scars therefore always significant? Perhaps not, like not all the time. Sometimes a scar could only be a scar, but for example, a short leg or a hunchback that in the story later on becomes hindered by that deformity. At that point, the deformity becomes relevant to the story. Okay, so it is. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to write perfect characters all the time that have no imperfections? Yeah. Okay, but would that make the story fun? Not necessarily.
No,
Would it add a little bit more to our character? Definitely. Okay. So if a writer brings up a physical problem or handicap, he probably means something by it. Okay, a writer is not including this just because. And then here you see like Harry Potter. We see Beast in Beauty and the Beast. For those of you who watch anime, Rurouni Kenshin with the scars on the cheek. If you see the story or the anime, you'll realize how he got the scar, and then it becomes a little bit more relevant, and you understand a little bit more of why his character is the way it is. For those of you who watch
Jennifer, The Witcher.
The Witcher, yeah, we have the character Jennifer, and we see her deformity in the beginning, and then how she changes and what she gives up to achieve that change. And for a large part of the story, she is unable to accept that change and tries to revert what she had to give up for that, and is unable to. But it becomes part of her character, part of her mission as a person, to be able to get a little bit of that humanity back that she gave up to cure that deformity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So our characters are presented in that way for a reason. So now, scars as symbolism. Scars are typically a symbol that marks a character for greatness. In the Kite Runner, scars are mentioned a variety of times. Baba has the 3 parallel scars. Okay. Hassan has the scar after the surgery and the hair lip before the surgery. Very good, Berrios. Ali has the polio leg. Okay. Sorry, what was that?
Ali having that problem and the leg and the limb counts as a scar.
Definitely. Okay. We see that Amir has the scars on his hands from the kite fighting. Okay. Soraya has the sickle-shaped birthmark on her jaw. Rahim Khan, now that you guys have gotten to that part, has the scar on his eyebrow from the altercation with the Taliban, where he gets gun-butted. Okay, and Sanal Bar has the scarred face. And remember that in the beginning of the novel, she was so beautiful that she was irresistible to men. And now, as an older woman, as a grandmother, okay, her face has been scarred by the life that she chose to live and the abuse that she received before returning to her son, or finding
Teacher.
again her son. Yes, Ramos.
The past can be the scars can be a symbolism of the past.
Of course, they can be a symbol for the obstacles that the character has had to overcome to become who they are. Okay, so are scars only physical? I leave you with that rhetorical question.
Amir has a scar.
Amir had a soul scar.
Okay, very good. So the scars for most characters in the novel show the motif that a character has overcome a significant difficulty in their life, for most characters. And after that, they have become being enhanced or have come out as a new person. They're almost baptized by that trauma. Amir's scars on his hands, however, serve as a reminder of his guilt. He is the only character that is scarred, and his scar doesn't serve as a sign of redemption or betterment or improvement as a person. So this scar for Amir almost represents the blood that is in his hands because of betraying Hassan when they were children. Okay, so that motif helps the author build the theme that one, the character, a person, must repent and atone for past sins. You have those scars that show you the things that you have lived through, and you must overcome that. You must let those scars heal in some kind of way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So why do authors use these literary devices? Okay, why do they use motif? They use motif to help writers organize, writers use motif to help themselves organize symbols, plot development, and imagery into a pattern that emphasizes the themes or the messages in their work that they want to communicate to the readers. Okay. Number two, they give us a sense of structure and continuity by creating a pattern that recurs throughout the work and that we can identify as the readers. They help the writers weave together different and seemingly unrelated parts of a narrative. Okay, so every time that we see the winter and we see what's happening with Amir and he's remembering things, we're able to understand that pattern. We're able to understand that when he's mentioning winter, something is happening in his life that's changing him. Okay? And lastly, they enable writers to subtly restate or remind the reader of certain ideas throughout the text using vivid and often very memorable imagery. Because we will remember, all of you remember the hair lip. All of you remember Hassan's surgery that Baba paid for. All of you remember the cars that Baba had and the feeling that Amir had in Afghanistan versus how they felt when they moved to the US. So these are all things that the author is able to put in the story to create a memorable image of what's happening and draw us into what's happening, the changes that the characters are living through, the difficulties that they're overcoming within that story. Does that make sense? Yeah? So today's main takeaways for today. Number one, a motif is a repeated pattern of symbols that reinforces a theme. Number two, theme is a message that the author wants the reader to take home. Okay, not one word. We never use one-word themes. It is a message, so it needs to be at least a sentence or a phrase. Okay, and last, writers use motifs to leave the reader with a memorable impression. Okay, if you guys want to find more information, I put the bibliography of where I found some of the information that I put in this work and that you guys can use to teach yourselves a little bit more. At this point, we have 5 minutes left of official class. I can stay a little bit longer if any of you guys have questions or comments.
I have a question.